Today, we're going to break down the core ideas of Spiritism. It's a philosophy from the 19th century put together by a thinker named Allan Kardec that really tries to tackle the biggest questions we all have. What are we? Where did we come from? And where are we all going? So let's just dive right in. And this is the question that's right at the heart of it all. Spiritism asks us to reframe our whole lives, to see it not as this one, single, finite story, but as just one volume in a huge epic series about a soul's journey toward perfection. Okay, so where does a journey like that even begin? To really get a handle on the path, we first have to understand who's doing the traveling. We have to understand the spirit itself. So the idea here is that every single spirit starts out as a blank slate. You're not born good, you're not born evil, you're just new. And this isn't seen as some kind of flaw. Actually, it's the whole foundation for our potential. Every soul is created with free will and the ability to learn, to grow, and ultimately to evolve. This is basically the roadmap. It lays out the entire arc. See, spirits are created with a purpose, and that purpose is to progress. But this isn't a passive thing. You don't just sit back and wait for it. It's something you achieve through active labor, through experience, all of it moving you from that simple starting point toward this ultimate goal of moral and intellectual perfection. So, how in the world does a spirit get all this labor and experience? Well, this brings us to the core engine of the whole system, the mechanism for all this spiritual evolution, reincarnation. This is probably the most powerful metaphor Spiritism uses to explain why we're here. The idea is that life isn't just some random, chaotic series of events. No, it's more like a structured curriculum. And all the challenges we face, the trials, the hard times, those are the specific lessons we need to learn to get over our own imperfections and build new virtues. And we're not talking about just a few classes here. This curriculum is vast. Through countless different lives, a spirit might experience what it's like to be wealthy, to be poor, to have power, to be powerless, to feel joy, to feel sorrow. Every single one of these unique lives gives you a completely different set of lessons. The whole point is to give you a well-rounded spiritual education, to build empathy and eventually wisdom. This quote brings up a really key idea, something called expiation. Basically, it's the concept that the hardships we're facing right now aren't necessarily random. They could be opportunities to fix something we got wrong in a past life. It's like a cosmic rebalancing act that makes sure that in the long run, justice is served for every single action. But the journey doesn't just hit pause when one physical life ends. Let's take a look at what happens to the spirit in that time between incarnations. Exactly. What happens in the off-season? Well, this is when the spirit returns to what's described as its true home, the spirit world. And there, it gets to reflect on the lessons it just learned, absorb new knowledge, and start preparing for its next life, its next semester in the school of Earth. And this is where Spiritism really reinterprets some traditional ideas about the afterlife. Take hell, for instance. The idea here is that hell is not some physical place of eternal torture created by a vengeful God. No, instead, it's described as an internal and, importantly, temporary state, like a horrible nightmare of regret that's created by the spirit's own conscience when it's forced to face its mistakes. I mean, listen to this account from a so-called suffering spirit. It makes that concept so vivid, doesn't it? The abyss isn't a literal pit of fire. It's the internal pain of guilt. The darkness is just the spirit's own moral state. It's a self-imposed prison that it has to learn how to escape from. And it's the same thing for heaven. It's not some final destination, a static reward you get for just believing the right things. It's a state of being. It's a peace that a spirit earns through its own effort and moral growth. It's not the end of the line. It's just a milestone on a journey that goes on forever. And here, we get to see the other side of that coin. This is a communication from a happy spirit, and it just captures that feeling of liberation and deep, deep peace. When it talks about the disgraceful body, it's not saying physical life is bad. It's just expressing the incredible freedom you feel when you're no longer held back by the material limitations and all the imperfections of an earthly life. So you might be wondering, what's the engine driving all of this? What governs this whole system, from the school of life to these states of heaven and hell? Well, it's all powered by a universal principle they call the law of progress. And this, right here, is the absolute core of the whole philosophy. Free will is everything. Every choice you make, every action you take is actively shaping your destiny. We are not just puppets of fate. We are the builders of our own spiritual future, and every single moment gives us a chance to either move forward or slide backward. So what's holding us back? What are the biggest roadblocks on this path? Spiritism points to these vices as the root cause of our suffering, and the main things that get in the way of our evolution. Things like pride, envy, hatred, these are all obstacles we create for ourselves. But selfishness, in particular, is seen as the big one, the ultimate source that all the other moral flaws spring from. This quote is a real mic drop moment because it completely flips that old excuse, the flesh is weak, right on its head. The argument is that you can't blame your body or your physical urges for your moral mistakes. The spirit is the thinking, willing part of you. It's always in charge. And that means the responsibility for everything we do lies squarely with us. Okay, so we've been looking at the individual journey. Now let's pull the camera back, way, way back, and look at the bigger picture. Where does all of this fit in the grand scheme of the entire universe? In this view, our Earth is just one of countless schools in the cosmos, and frankly, a pretty elementary one at that. It's considered a world of trials and expiation, and it's populated by spirits like us who are still battling our major imperfections. But the idea is that there are more advanced worlds out there, where life is less of a struggle, and they're inhabited by spirits who've earned their spot through their own moral progress. And this quote is really meant to put our whole existence into perspective. The cosmology described in Spiritism is just breathtaking in its scale. Our entire galaxy is just a tiny speck. But this vastness isn't empty. It's seen as being filled with countless worlds, all at every possible stage of evolution, all part of one single interconnected cosmic journey. And that brings us all the way back to you. After exploring this grand cosmic map, the whole philosophy ultimately asks us to look inward. It encourages us to see our own lives not as a series of random accidents, but as a purposeful lesson, one that's been designed specifically for our own growth. So the question we're left with is, what is that lesson for you?